Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Marisa Lago, and I have the pleasure of serving as the Undersecretary of Commerce for International Trade at the U.S. Department of Commerce. I am so delighted to join you here today. I have to start by thanking the Atlantic Council for hosting us. If I've learned anything at this COP, it is that the commodity that is in shortest supply is space for meetings, so thank you. Thank you also to the International Code Council, or ICC, and especially its Senior Vice President for Global Operations and Solutions, Judy Sekreski. She's the one who has brought us all together here. Now, I have been on many panels, I've given many speeches here during my 5 days on the ground at COP. This is my last one, and this is the one that I have been waiting for. Before taking my current role, I was the head of the Department of City Planning for New York City, and I chaired the City Planning Commission, so worked very much with a densely built urban environment. But even the second reason I'm so excited is that I'm married to an architect who was one of the first LEED certified architects in the US, and his career is in designing university libraries, including 4 libraries on the campus where one of our panelists participated at Cornell. So lots of connections to this. So building green, which I think of as building smart, has positive implications for building sustainability and energy efficiency. That's why the Biden-Harris administration has set the ambitious goal of achieving net zero emissions in all federal facilities across the US by 2045. Since that's a way out, we've set an interim target of reducing greenhouse gas emissions by 50% by 2032, and we're feeling pretty good about this 50% target because last year our emissions were already down 39%, so we're well on our way. Just last week there was a meeting of the President's Export Council. This is an advisory body that is charged with providing advice to the President on promoting export expansion. They delivered to President Biden a comprehensive set of climate-related export recommendations, and I was especially struck by the fact that they had a recommendation calling on the US government to explore opportunities to reduce carbon emissions in the construction sector. More specifically, what the President's Export Council recommended was more rapid adoption of green procurement policies and revising building codes to incentivize decarbonization. I would guess that this is music to ICC's ears. The administration, the Biden-Harris administration, also was proud to publish a national climate resilience framework just this past September, and it features the built environment as one of 6 key resilience objectives. The framework outlined how the US government intends to make our built environment more resilient to climate shocks and chronic stressors like heat waves, drought, precipitation changes, sea level rise, and infrastructure degradation. And one of the primary opportunities for action is the adoption of the latest consensus-based building and energy codes that have high performance standards. Again, so aligned with what ICC does. Standards play an essential role in establishing the rules of the road that will help countries meet their climate resilience and adaptation goals. And as an added benefit, clear standards and building codes help to create greater certainty for the private sector. And that makes it easier for businesses to provide the best, most innovative and effective climate solutions. So that is why we're here today. At the U.S. Department of Commerce, we partner with numerous organizations to remove trade barriers and promote U.S. exports through a program that we call our Market Development Cooperator program. And it's through this program that we are proud to be partners of the ICC. The ICC's model building codes and standards deliver sustainable building solutions that are adaptable around the world. For countries and organizations that are determined to increase the safety and the sustainability of the built environment, the ICC's tools are an invaluable gift. It also takes vision to see where model codes can lead. And so huge kudos to the Pakistan Engineering Council, another acronym, PEC, under the leadership of Chairman Haroon. The PEC, through its work with ICC, envisions a bright and far more sustainable opportunity and future for Pakistan's building and more importantly, its people. And so I look forward to learning more about what PEC and ICC have done. And with that, I invite Judy to take the podium.
Thank you so much, Undersecretary Lago. That was amazing. Hello, everyone. I'm Judy Zakreski, the Senior Vice President for Global Operations and Solutions with the International Code Council. I'm so pleased to be here today to present the 2023 ICC Global Award. Established in 2012, this award recognizes distinguished service to the International Code Council's global mission and vision. The ICC Global Award is given to individuals or organizations with outstanding performance in promoting building safety in the world and supporting ICC in carrying out our global mission. The 2023 recipient of the Global Award is the Pakistan Engineering Council. In recent years, the Pakistan Engineering Council has taken an active role in improving the safety of buildings in Pakistan. Through working with the ICC, the PEC has adapted the International Building Code to form the Building Code of Pakistan, and with the support of the Market Development Cooperator Program grant from the U.S. Department of Commerce International Trade Administration, the PEC has also adapted the International Green Construction Code to form the Green Building Code of Pakistan. We've been able to extend that MDCP grant to create a user guide for the Green Building Code, as well as to enable the PEC to utilize our International Energy Conservation Code, Rainwater Collection Standard, and International Plumbing Code to create customized codes for Pakistan in areas of energy and water efficiency. The creation of the international code-based building regulations in Pakistan encourages the use of high-quality standards and design and robust and resilient engineered structures throughout the country. It also makes it easier for designers and regulators to access and apply ICC's training, credentialing, and conformity assessment solutions to build capacity and ensure safer, more sustainable, and resilient buildings in Pakistan and throughout the region. The Pakistan Engineering Council has also been extremely supportive of the ICC's efforts to promote our thought leadership and resources within the area of resilience and sustainability. Being here with us today at COP28 to talk about their journey, which follows PEC's participation in a similar panel discussion that ICC hosted during COP27. Here to receive the award are several esteemed members of the Pakistan Engineering Council, and I would like to invite them to join Undersecretary Lago and me on stage to receive the award and pose for a photograph, and then I'll invite the PEC Chairman, Engineer Mohammed Najib Haroon, to make some brief remarks. Please join me in congratulating the 2023 ICC Global Award recipient, the Pakistan Engineering Council.
Thank you very much. Ms. Marisa Lago, Jeff Mitchell, if he's there online, Judy Zakreski, Sarah Zidliski, dignitaries, ladies and gentlemen. Indeed, an honor for me to be as chairman of Pakistan Engineering Council to have been recipient of this award. About myself, three things I want to bring home first. Number one, I was from the private sector and about 2 years back got elected as chairman of Pakistan Engineering Council. Two, I was already a parliamentarian there and was a member of the National Assembly of Pakistan, which is the legislative body. Thirdly, in my 30s of age, I went to school to Oregon State University on the West Coast and did my master's in civil engineering. And as a young man, decided not to, like most of my friends who stayed back, and we keep complaining about the brain drain, I decided to go back and to fix things back home in Pakistan. So for the last 36, 37 years, I have done that, and I have been part of that, effort, so that the underdeveloped world, the third world, which has stayed where it has stayed, should come out of its problems. In that effort, about the Pakistan Engineering Council, Pakistan Engineering Council is a regulatory body basically for the engineers or the engineering profession end to end. That is, as soon as after their A levels or high school, student enters the engineering university, whether that's the curriculum, whether what disciplines, emerging technologies, whatever is taking place, the accreditation of the engineering schools out there, Pakistan Engineering Council is leading that effort in partnerships with agreements with International Code Council also, and other international organizations like IEEE, local stakeholders for promoting building safety in Pakistan. So we are almost 360 degree to begin with. Pakistan Engineering Council has been providing that leadership that has been there, the journey of PEC and ICC collaboration, which started actually after the devastating earthquake of 2005, which was very damaging. Of course, it started from there, and after all this climate resilient, sustainable infrastructure, which was part of the rebuilding of most regions which were nearly destroyed out there, and the biggest challenges of the climate change and its adverse impacts on the national water, food, and energy security. That's the biggest problem, some of the basic issues that Pakistan is still struggling with. About the Global Climate Change Index, Pakistan is ranked at 5th topmost affected country despite having less than 1%, close to 0.5% of the global greenhouse gas emissions. But who said it's a fair world? So Pakistan gets a beating, and sitting at the bottom out there, we wash the dirty linen of most part of the developed world. But now how to do about it and how to cope up, like through this COP82 opportunity, establish the Global Loss and Damage Fund for rehabilitation of damaged infrastructure also due to climate change in emerging economies, which is highly appreciated because a lot of fund, because more than 800,000 houses, nearly 1/3 of the country was underwater. So, whatever little infrastructure existed, that too went down the drain. Overviewing this backdrop, Pakistan Engineering Council, under the role of think tank for the federal government, under the act of the parliament, it says that the Pakistan Engineering Council will act as think tank for the federal government. It's a powerhouse, it's a brain house with all engineers from multiple disciplines contributing through lateral inputs into the policies of the government. So that responsibility is being shouldered by the Pakistan Engineering Council, and we develop or review various policies, regulations, standards, and codes, of course, adopting international standards to climatize with the local conditions for the benefit through implementation. Of course, the toughest part, the difficult part is the implementation part. Because, with budgetary constraints, with cost of construction skyrocketing, with our, the parity of rupee versus dollar depleting, it becomes an uphill task. So Pakistan Engineering Council, as per given mandate, has successfully approved the updated Building Code of Pakistan 2021, the Green Building Code of Pakistan 2023, even the rainwater harvesting provisions for building 2023, and it has been there with never-ending technical assistance of International Code Council, and further we are now working on development of occupational safety codes and energy conservation codes. So everything has to be done, but we are on it, and I promise you that we mean to do it. The challenge is now to adapt and implementation of these codes, like I mentioned. That's the most difficult part at all levels, federal right up to district levels, with a strong partnership of local and international partners, financial institutions, of course, industry and academia, consulting engineers and constructors, and development agencies. PC has initiated a bilateral discussions with IFC, because World Bank, because funding, of course, is a major constraint, and I'm sure these institutions have been of help in channelizing the funds through different funding agencies, so that the first-class infrastructure can be developed and maintained. The Green Building Code will largely address standardized building construction for decarbonization of entire built environment in Pakistan, with key objectives of energy efficiency, water conservation, waste reduction, indoor environmental quality, building certification, etc. It is a matter of global prestige for PEC, particularly the engineering fraternity of this prestigious ICC Global Award 2023 to PEC during COP28 climate conference. So we remain dedicated to advancing these ideals, and with our global partners, we look forward to contributing further to the global sustainability agenda for decarbonizing the built environment in Pakistan. On behalf of the government of Pakistan, because this is the Pakistan Engineering Council is autonomous body. It raises its own fund through its memberships, etc. Very little or no influence I can go after 2 years of saying that we are purely autonomous. We take our own decisions. We have a small assembly of good, including myself, 66, 46 of them elected, 20 nominated from various institutions and the provincial government. So we have a small council which takes its own decisions and moves ahead with that. So I would like to thank the U.S. Department of Commerce for their necessary support to develop the building codes and encouraging remarks. Undersecretary, thank you very much, ma'am. We are highly indebted to Mr. Geoff Mitchell, the chair of ICC Global Membership Council, for honoring PEC with ICC Global Award, the continued technical guidance to crystallize the collaborative formwork between ICC and PEC by Mark A. Johnson and Judy, yourself, is greatly commendable. I would hope, and I would like to, plead that we must get that support, because Pakistan, with good 250 million odd people, and of course at the bottom of the ladder, has a lot to, do, so that, the quality of life of the people and the environment around them, improves. And I also want to appreciate the pivotal role played by Dr. Saroj Lodhi, who is Vice Chancellor of one of the universities, very coveted university. I'm a graduate of ND. He's presently the Vice Chancellor of that university, and he's convener of the PEC Technical Committee, along with the team and the efforts put forth pertaining to regulatory framework for necessary legislation and developing future strategies. Dr. Nasir Mahmood Khan, our registrar, is also here, and Fazul Saptan, the secretary to the committee, who also did his homework well. And thank you very much for hearing me out. Thank you. Bye-bye.
So one of the biggest challenges after finding space here at COP is time management. And so I'm going to mix it up on the panelists. Initially, you were going to be giving opening statements, but in the interest of time, what I'm going to ask you to do is to introduce your organization very briefly and then move on to addressing our first question, which is basically the challenges, the barriers to achieving more green and resilient buildings, and maybe a big idea about how to overcome the challenge. And so, our first speaker, over to you, Dr. Sarosh Lodi.
Thank you very much.
And a total of 5 minutes.
I'll try to do it in 4.5. Thank you very much. My name is Sarosh Lodi. I represent Pakistan Engineering Council. I was the chair of the convener of the committee which eventually got this code finalized. Obviously, a big help from ICC and the US Department of Commerce. So that's my brief introduction. It took us a long time, to understand the limitations of the building code, and then obviously the naturalization of the building code. Not everything which was there in ICC is truly applicable. But finally, we have a document which is, I would say, naturalized to the Pakistani conditions. However, the challenge remains implementation. I've been part of all the building codes or the provisions that had been developed since 2007. And out of my experience, I could say that the implementation requires a lot of capacity building. The understanding of the document is not a very difficult thing, especially among the engineering community. But the way these building codes are developed, they're developed in the center, and the idea is to top-down approach which trickles down to the level of the building departments to implement them. And this is where the challenge is. The capacity, the understanding, the willingness, and obviously the requisite infrastructure. So my take today would be that indeed it's an honor for us to receive the ICC award, but at the same time, we have to go back and work very diligently to make sure that all the stakeholders are on board. There is a certain level of ownership so that we could faithfully implement this thing. As a result, we are working on the building code commentary as well, so that the commentary is going to help an effective implementation of the building code. Thank you.
Great, Judy, can we toss it over to you?
Thank you. I'll save time also because I've already introduced myself, and I think you've all heard plenty about ICC, but we are a global provider of building safety solutions. I would say I would agree with you, Dr. Lodi, that capacity building is a big challenge. For that reason, you may have heard about the buildings breakthrough that was announced on Wednesday. We have an initiative to support the buildings breakthrough in the countries that have signed on to it that is focused on capacity building. So really looking at the building safety ecosystem in a holistic way. And ensuring that the building code that's adopted is right-sized, which the Pakistan Engineering Council has done with the Green Code, and then to make sure that you have that a country or jurisdiction has all of the elements in place to effectively enforce that code, including a building regulator, a way to measure the competence of practitioners all throughout the value chain, as well as right-sized standards, methods of conformity assessment to ensure that products are correctly designed and installed, and then the need for inspectors and plan reviewers. So really looking at the whole system holistically when you embark upon adopting a building code to make sure that whatever is adopted is implementable and enforceable. And I would tack onto that challenge the value proposition question. In terms of achieving green buildings, I think the benefit-cost ratio of investing in building green and building for resilience is not always considered because the low cost drives everything, and the benefit-cost ratio of investing at the front end is not. It needs to be better understood from a total cost of ownership perspective, not just a first cost of sale perspective, as well as looking at the total community benefit of building green and building resilient for health, for resilience, for passive survivability. So this is not a technology problem. It's an education and policy problem.
I'm struck by your reference to the fact that as hard as it was to adopt the Green Building Code, it is that much harder to implement. And that's a point, Judy, that you raised as well. And I think you also used another hugely important word, which is enforcement, which is making sure that as buildings are constructed, they follow the code, because the most beautiful code, if not implemented, isn't worth the paper. So our final panelist is Sarah Zaleski, who is the Chief Products Officer of the U.S. Green Building Council.
Thank you so much. Really wonderful to be here. Thank you, Judy and ICC, for having USGBC represented here, and thank you for your opening remarks. You mentioned two terms that are near and dear to my heart: Cornell, where I'm an alum. I spent many, many years of my life in those libraries, and your husband being a lead AP, which is wonderful. So I think that picks up on kind of the capacity building. So USGBC are the purveyors of LEED. Many of you might know it, that program. It's in 180 countries and territories around the world, including many in Pakistan, and we've been a long-standing proponent. We're just celebrating our 30th anniversary of green building codes. I think two of the biggest challenges where really I think you have this synergistic relationship between green building standards, which are sometimes kind of more aspirational or kind of, demonstrating leadership, and then codes, which set the floor, is really building capacity in those markets. So I do think that's a huge issue. And that's everything from, just consumer awareness of what's possible, to manufacturers, that you have, supply chains that are producing these materials. You have designers that can design these buildings. And then you actually have the construction trades that can, to build them, and then, the regular supporting environment around enforcement of codes and things. So I think that's a really important piece. So when you can set these green building standards and see that adoption, that ripens and cultivates those markets that are needed for effective code implementation. The other piece around that is, like I mentioned, demonstrating what's possible. And I think the consumer awareness of, Judy, as you mentioned, the multiple benefits of what, better buildings can really deliver for communities and for humans and for well-being is really important. And I think as consumers, we're getting smarter globally of asking more of our buildings, just like we would our cars. You can have beautiful cars that are also fuel efficient, that are also safe, and I think we're becoming more astute as consumers around the world. And so I guess I'll point quickly to the U.S. And we've seen a fair amount of improvement around efficiency and carbon intensity in our commercial buildings in the U.S., but it's been very uneven, and I think a lot of that is due to some uneven adoption of codes. And so congratulations, Pakistan, on really taking some important steps, and keep up the good work.
Well, thank you. I want to evolve the conversation a little bit, noting the variety of the folks who are up here on the stage. We have an industry-led association in PEC. We have the expert trade associations, NGOs, in ICC. We have government up here. We know that no one of us can do it alone. And so I'd ask you to expand on how public-private partnerships play into convincing others to adopt and then enforce green building codes. And if we could start with you, Sarah.
Yeah, thank you. I guess I'll start with, kind of ripening the markets, right? Because there's a huge economic opportunity here, and, it's wonderful to have your representation from Commerce. I think that's a wonderful example of that. And, I think there's the green buildings and a low carbon environment is really the future. That's where the economic growth is going to be. That's where we need to go. And I think there's a huge, workforce development and economic potential there. And so I think, being able to work together to send consistent signals around definitions, around key pieces that are important. It's really wonderful to see buildings get a more of a center stage at this COP this year. And so I think those aligned signals to the market can then allow industries to spring up, workforces to be trained, and I think that's big steps towards that shared prosperity.
Your views, Dr. Lodi.
All right. You see, in case of Pakistan, things are slightly different. Pakistan Engineering Council is a government-owned entity with a lot of autonomies, and there is a board of directors or a governing board, which is total 66 members, out of which 46 are elected. And the elected people represents all different sectors of engineering. So there are academics, there are professionals, consulting, contractors, so there is a wide variety of people who are elected, and then obviously the government is represented in form of 20 nominated people. So this is where all decisions are made here. So I would say it is kind of a different public-private partnership, where the private people also come in as a part of the government because of the being elected member, and being elected member, they have a huge responsibility to their constituency to make sure that the legislation related to engineering, whatever they're doing, is in the interest of the country and overall engineering profession. So that's the most I would say the biggest driving force behind Pakistan Engineering Council successes, because the constituency would expect them to do work which is eventually going to help the quality of engineering in the country. So this is how it works. It's very different than the US model.
It's very interesting that even in your structure, you have that public-private partnership represented.
Yeah.
So Judy, the ICC is probably a perfect example of public-private partnerships. We're here celebrating the PEC, but you work with so many other organizations. Can you build on this?
Absolutely, thank you. And I think I'd like to sort of take a global view based on some things that I've heard just at this COP from governments and the private sector. And I think what we really need to achieve in this goal of having more green and sustainable and resilient buildings is a real push-pull, right, with industry and the private sector. With the government and the private sector. The governments are saying, we're afraid to overregulate, and the private sector is saying we need your regulation, right? The regulation is necessary, and regulation shouldn't be a bad word. It needs to be there to set the bar high, and to send signals, as Sarah was saying, to the market, so that manufacturers, designers, contractors will demand a higher quality. And there's not a race to the bottom. If you have the regulations setting a high floor, your minimum is good. Building codes set a minimum standard. You want a minimum floor, and you want that floor to require sustainability, to require resilience, and then the market will respond. And so I think that the industry needs regulation, and the government needs the support of industry to regulate. So I think that's, in the implementation part of codes and standards, we really need that collaboration. And I think that's the case around the world.
Such a sage observation, because in the US we are so committed to industry-led standard setting. We know that the innovation, the expertise that industry brings to the table. Within the Department of Commerce, we have the National Institute of Standards and Technology, and some people may think, standard setting is some dry, dusty exercise. Not at all. It speaks to values. When we think about building standards, the fact that safety and sustainability just have to be baked into everything that you do. And I look to Pakistan. By adopting these international standards, you are branding yourself, saying we are willing to hold ourselves to these high standards. I think we have time for another question. By the work that all three of you do, it's clear that you're visionaries. You're looking beyond the today. And so I would ask you, where do you see the global market for green buildings going? Not in the next 10 years, because that's pretty short term, but think out 20 years. What do you want to see out there? And I'm going to start with you, Dr. Lodi.
Thank you very much. I mean, this was the question I was looking forward to, actually. And Judy has already mentioned a few things, about the quality standards and the increase in the cost of these things. I think we are slowly, gradually moving towards a paradigm shift, where the safety will have a different definition. Traditionally, when we talk about building, the safety comes first. No matter what it takes, if you have to make a safe building, you spend that money, no matter how expensive it is. Now, I think the definition of the safety or the understanding of the safety needs to be changed. The understanding of the safety is that the building should remain functional and it must not kill people. But, but at the same time, it must not create problems for the environment. I mean, I can give you, we had massive floods in 2010, followed by massive rains in 2011, followed by very massive flooding in 2020-22, followed by a massive flood in 2022, So in a span of like 12 years, we had 4 very big floods where the people have suffered and they've realized that it may not be because of their fault, but somebody has made these things in the past and we are paying the price. So why don't we mend things in a manner that it doesn't affect our livelihood, it doesn't affect the quality of the life that we live in. We don't have to go back and rebuild things again and again. So I see this thing as a complete paradigm shift in the next 20 years.
I reflect on the fact that many of us in the US are used to going to a restaurant and seeing in the window the health code rating. And I am so proud of my hometown of New York City. You walk into a multifamily apartment building and there is an energy efficiency rating. And I do think that bringing that transparency is incredibly helpful. I'll pose the same question to you, Sarah, because the U.S. Green Building Council has been at the forefront of looking out into the future.
Yeah, thank you for the question, and I'm glad you brought up New York City. So, oftentimes when we talk about code, it's in the new building context, and I think we know that we have to start building, zero carbon ready buildings today, right? So the new construction, we want to future-proof that so those investments are not going to become obsolete or stranded in a number of years. But there's a huge opportunity in the existing building space, and New York certainly has been a leader in that. And so I think how do you retrofit buildings is a more difficult and thorny question than how do you build new buildings, and I think there's a lot of innovation that's ripe there. Thinking about how we repurpose buildings, thinking about material circularity and how we're building for modulation in the future and repurposed materials, I think is a huge area that's ripe for innovation and disruption too. And then I think really thinking about buildings is not being less bad or less extractive, but actually being regenerative, looking at nature-based solutions that could be carbon sinks perhaps, or helpful in biodiversity. So I think there's a lot of headroom for continued growth and innovation there.
I think also there's an important element of public education as well. I know that when New York City said in new construction, you can no longer have gas stoves. Well, those of us who have been cooking on gas for years were horrified, and you just have to learn.
Turns out induction's not that bad. It's pretty great, actually, yeah.
Exactly, but I also think that when we looked at the emerging economies and said, oh, they're burning wood, well, we were burning natural gas with ill effects. So, Judy, we're going to end with you as our hosts. The ICC operates globally, which gives you a really broad perspective. Where are we going to be in 20 years?
Okay, so half of the buildings, I'll put it in context, half of the buildings that will be standing in the year 2050 have not yet been built. Okay, and on top of that, the equivalent of Paris, of the floor space of Paris, is added every 5 days, and that the floor space of the buildings in Japan, the equivalent, is added every year, and this will continue through 2060. So this is the market. This is the market for new buildings. All of those buildings need to be sustainable and resilient green buildings. That's where we should be aiming, because those are the buildings, and most of these are in emerging economies, and these are the buildings that are going to be contributing to the climate in the future. They're the buildings that will need to be resilient to the increasingly frequent and severe weather hazards that we will see in the future. And so it's really important to be building smart, resilient, sustainable buildings today. And the focus needs to be on the engineered buildings, right? We need to focus on the probably of what, upwards of about 75% of the buildings in emerging economies, if you're talking about buildings, are probably residential buildings that are built in a traditional or vernacular way. So if we focus on the engineered solutions and building those clean, sustainable, green, resilient buildings, that's where the focus needs to be. And in order to do that, I think we need incentives from the government, from the private sector, and we need private sector drivers. Again, it's a public-private partnership. The design community, the financing community, insurance community, all of the banks can be demand drivers, insurance companies can be demand drivers and push the market forward. Say, you have financial incentives to build sustainably, you have insurance incentives to build a resilient building. And so we need all of these groups to come together and push the market. And I think that's hopefully something that we'll achieve with the buildings breakthrough. So many actors coming together, and I applaud all of the countries that have signed on, including the United States, and all of the industry that has gotten behind it with the incentives and initiatives that will support the implementation of that breakthrough.
Now, that is a rousing finish to this panel. I want to leave everyone in this room with a charge. You're here because you have an interest in this issue, and go out and be ambassadors for the vision that has been laid out by the panelists. Let's give them a round of applause.